Kristen Moore. I'm a project manager here at Armor. It is sometimes my face, sometimes just my voice that you're going to see today. And there's my co-host. His name is Chris. He is one of our technical account managers. He is manning that question box that we just practiced. So anytime when I'm speaking, if you have a question, feel free to type it into that box and Chris will get you an answer. Thanks, Chris. So for some of you on this webinar, you might be very familiar with Armor. But for others, you might need a little introduction or reintroduction to Armor. So at Armor, while we manufacture rust prevention and rust removal products, we know that our purpose is to protect your brand, your customers' brands, your parts and your customers' parts, and most importantly, your reputation. Well, and how we do it? It's with that very first bullet point you see on your screen, which is VCI, or Vapor Corrosion Inhibiting Nanotechnology. And you'll hear me call it VCI today. You might hear me call it rust prevention, or maybe I'll say the whole name, Vapor Corrosion Inhibiting Nanotechnology. Now on your screen right now, I think another bullet point that you might find most interesting is that second bullet point from the bottom, which is over 90% of Fortune 500 companies, well, they rely on Armor products. So here's how we're going to break the webinar down today. We're going to talk for just a few minutes in the beginning about the nuts and bolts of VCI. What is VCI? Then we're going to spend the bulk of the time on our top 10 on why it pays to know where your VCI comes from. And then last, we're going to wrap it up with an expose on the real cost of rust, and it's a video that we're going to watch just a couple minutes. So we'll go ahead and get started with that first bullet point, which is about VCI. So if you work with metal or your customers work with metal, you know that you only need these three things in order to have rust. You need metal, you need air, and you need moisture. And if you have those three things, then you are going to have rust. But you can prevent rust. And the way that we're going to talk about preventing rust today is VCI. So here's just your high-level overview on VCI. If you look at your screen right now, that bottle right in the middle of your screen, that represents VCI. And for VCI to work, it needs what we call a carrier. And on the left-hand side of your screen, you'll see in this example, it's craft paper. And that craft paper is coated, sometimes we say in the industry, it's impregnated with VCI. And then you can take your metal part and you can put it into that craft paper, wrap it up, and you have rust prevention on your metal. Now here's another example. We've just switched the carrier of VCI. So we've swapped out craft paper and we've added poly, and that poly is extruded with VCI. So you take your metal part, you put it into that poly bag, you close it up, and again, you have rust prevention on that metal. Now, I love this image on your screen right now. I think it really helps to visualize how VCI works. So VCI is represented in those little white dots you see on your screen right now. And VCI is volatile, which just means that it wants to leave the carrier that it's in, it's attracted to the metal, it puts a barrier on that metal, and it keeps out that air and that moisture and those contaminants, those things that can cause rust. Now you might be asking yourself, well, how thick is that barrier? When we're talking about VCI, we are talking about nanotechnology. So if you look at the left-hand side of your screen, VCI is 4 to 6 nanometers thick. Now look all the way at the right-hand side of your screen. A single sheet of paper, one sheet of paper, is 100,000 nanometers thick. That's how clean, safe, and easy VCI is to use. Now before I get into our 10 reasons about VCI, I want you to know this slide, which is that not all VCIs are the same. And the easiest way I can describe to you the difference between VCI is to give you an analogy about tires. So say I'm buying a used car, I call up the dealership and I say to the person on the phone, I'm looking for this car, and they say, great, we have it, and guess what? We put new tires on it. I go in, I buy that car, I drive off, and about 10,000 miles later, those tire treads are shot. And in that moment, I realize, ooh, there is a difference between just cheap, generic tires and good tires, like a Goodyear or Michelin brand. And the same is true about VCI. Not all VCIs are the same. So I'm going to hop off your screen right now, and we are going to head into then the 10 reasons to make sure you buy your rust prevention VCI from a known credible source. All right, so the first one, the easiest one, number one, you want to protect your reputation. It takes 20 years to build a reputation and 5 minutes to ruin it. And if you think about that, you'll do things differently. So if you are a distributor that buys and sells products for a living, you know your reputation is an integral part of your offering. Distributors typically, you don't make a product, so you rely on another company's products and another company's quality control. And VCI or vapor corrosion inhibitors, well, they are performance products. They perform an important and necessary function to prevent rust on metal parts in shipping or storage. So we say, don't put your business in the hands of an unknown product or company just to save a buck. Now, number two, you want to protect your customer's reputation. So you know, perhaps the best way to protect your own reputation is by assuring you're protecting your customer's reputation. So look at your screen right now. Companies such as Caterpillar and Ford and Volvo, GM, GE, they spend millions of dollars each year to market their company. And the last thing they want is for a customer to open up one of their parts and have it covered in rust. So we say make sure you're working with a reputable rust preventative VCI brand so you don't put your customer's reputation on the line as well. All right, this one, number three, who are you gonna call? And the answer is not Ghostbusters, but it is the fact that rust does happen. And it is as sure as death and taxes. And we at Armor are confident that even old Ben Franklin would agree if he knew how difficult it was to ship a load of steel automotive components from Mexico to the USA in the springtime. So when a frantic call comes in from your customers and you're using an unknown VCI source from a low-priced extruder, who are you going to call? Who is going to make that long walk with you down that yellow caution tape plant center aisle to inspect those bins of rusty parts? Well, we want you to call us. With Armor, we stand behind our products and their technology, and we provide technical support each step of the way. So at this moment, if you were thinking, oh, I need someone with me on site, then feel free just to write technical support in that question box, write on-site visit in that question box. Chris will connect you with your right technical account manager to talk about your specific needs. So again, if your customer is experiencing a rust issue and you want to walk through that with our technical team, we are here for you. Because who are you going to call? Well, it's Armor. All right, number four. It is in the secret sauce. So, as I mentioned earlier in the tire analogy, no two VCI formulas are the same. And with an unknown VCI source, the chemistry isn't just a secret, it's unknown what's exactly in the product. Armor's VCI formulations are in fact our secret sauce, but our technology and formulations are backed with years of research, development, and testing. And you might want to jot this down, with all the new global standards, which we'll talk about in a little bit, and the specifications that you need to navigate, the best bet is to rely on a company that's been producing their own proprietary VCI formulas for over 40 years. So when you need that REACH document or health and safety approval for a key OEM, well, at Armor, we've got you covered. And right now, if you are looking for those REACH documents or if you're looking for specific SDS sheets, then you can just type that right in the question box to Chris and he will get it sent out to you. All right, number five, who's minding the P's and Q's? So we say, who's minding the P's and Q's? Because with an unknown or generic VCI source, who is responsible for the product performance and quality? When you don't put your name on it and it's generic, it's easy to treat it as a commodity. And at Armor, we are fanatical about performance and quality because our name and our reputation is on the line. So this one we're going to get into a little bit of science, which is number 6, which is vapor versus contact and the long and the short of it. So we're going to look at this slide again. But what I didn't mention earlier is something about the technology of VCI. So did you know, not everyone knows, that not all VCIs provide good vapor phase protection? Meaning, if the metal isn't touching or close to the part, rust protection won't be achieved. And did you also know that some VCIs don't work well the opposite way, when they have direct contact with the metal? And there's also VCIs out there that work quickly, but they fizzle out over the long haul. So at Armor, we use our VCI mixed inhibitor technology, and that ensures both superior contact, so when the VCI is touching the metal, and vapor phase, so when the VCI is not touching the metal, corrosion prevention. And it provides the ability to vaporize a space quickly, but also have a lasting effect for years of protection. And so you can check out our outside independent lab test and customer lab test for proof. And if those are something that you need, then feel free just to type that in the box to Chris, and he'll provide that information. So number 7, and I touched on this a little bit earlier, which is worldwide standards. So many of you work with companies, or you yourself are a company that ships internationally, and you have to meet REACH and CPL and ECHA standards for the chemical content and labelings. So for example, companies such as Toyota have adopted the European Union's chemical and labeling regulations several years before they were even required by international law. And again, with an unknown VCI source, you run the risk of either violating these regulations or having to do extra labeling or extra paperwork if they're using chemicals on the reportable substance list. So with Armor, you can be assured that our chemistry meets worldwide standards, including those standards for the European Union and for Japan. All right, number 8, to a man with a hammer, everything looks like a nail. So if your supplier only sells generic VCI film, the only recommendation for rust problems is going to be a generic VCI film. And doesn't limited options mean limited answers for your rust prevention needs? So if you're on this webinar and you are a distributor, your job is to supply your customers with what they need. But often, they rely on you also for your expertise to guide them through what that is and who they should rely on. And Armor works hard to have the right mix of VCI products. So if you look at your screen right now, how I mentioned earlier in the webinar, for VCI to work, it needs a carrier. These are our family of products, and these are our, for an easy way to say it, all of our different carriers of VCI. So right in the middle of your screen, you see that cracked paper. If you look onto the blue, you see that VCI that's extruded into poly. We also have VCI in stretch. We have VCI that's in foam, shield emitters, chipboard, and we have a liquid form of VCI, which is dry coat rust preventative spray. So if you would like to have this Armor family of products, either this slide or maybe the entire stock list sent to you so you can see that, feel free just to type that in the box to Chris and he will get it sent right over to you. All right, number 9, you can't teach experience. I've mentioned it earlier, but at Armor, we've been working on eradicating rust for over 40 years. And we've seen just about every rust prevention application and challenge and have the lab testing and real life success stories to back up whatever solution we present. So if you have a specific project you're working on, maybe you have a specific automotive part, or maybe you have a specific type of product you want to use, and you would like a testimonial, or what we call at Armor, a rustimonial about that, feel free to type it in the box to Chris and he'll get it sent out. And if you just want a few ideas, you can say, hey, send me a couple of your rustimonials and he'll get those sent out to you in either a physical copy or an electronic version. And number 10 is worldwide support. So as I keep saying, we know that rust happens. Whether it's poor preventative maintenance on the metalworking fluids, workers not wearing gloves to prevent contact corrosion from the acidity on their skin, there are times that rust appears at the end of a shipment, and it's important to find the root cause so it doesn't happen again. With Armor, we've got you covered literally around the world. Whether you need us to track down a rusty shipment or assist you with a trial, Armor has global locations and global representatives in over 25 countries around the world, ready to take the work out of your work day. So now that we've covered the 10 reasons why you should make sure you're buying your rust prevention from a credible source, let's talk about an issue that impacts everyone on this call, every sales manager, every purchasing manager, every part of your organization, and that is money. And the best way I can describe to you the cost that rust can cost you and your organization is what we call the Rust Iceberg. So just like a regular iceberg, what's sticking out of the water is not what sinks the ship. It's everything underneath the water is what sinks the ship. So we all know the cost of scrapping and sorting and reworking. But sometimes when it comes to rust, we forget about the hidden cost of rust, like those 8D meetings. So we at Armor have put together for you just a couple minutes of video that we're going to watch on the real cost of using cheap VCI. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to turn on the video. From doing so many of these webinars, we know that there is a couple second delay. So when I turn the video on my end, your screen will go black for a couple seconds, and then you'll be able to hear the video. If you do not hear it, usually look up at the left-hand side of your screen, and it'll say play video sound, and you'll be able to turn that on. And we will all talk again in just a couple minutes.
The real cost of cheap VCI. Meet Rusty. The company that he works for makes metal parts. Every year it's the same thing. Rusty's company is always trying to find new ways to save money. And this year, Rusty had the idea of saving money on his rust preventative vapor corrosion inhibitors. Rusty figured that they manufacture 30,000 parts per week at a cost of $1 per part for a total of $30,000 worth of parts. For years, Rusty's company has relied on Armor Protected Packaging's VCI, that's vapor corrosion inhibitors, to protect their parts from rust. Armor recommended the following for packaging their parts. For every 100 parts packaged, there's one Armor Poly VCI bag priced at $4.20 and one sheet of Armor Wrap paper at $1 per sheet, which brings the total piece priced to 0.052 cents each. Using Armor's recommendation as a guide, Rusty decides to look into cheaper VCI. So he went online, did a little research, and found that he could save around 7 to 10%, or $8,112 initially. So Rusty decides to go with the cheap VCI to save the company some money. What Rusty doesn't know are the cold hard facts on VCI. Fact: not all VCI is the same. Fact: many VCI products don't work well. Fact: some work well in direct contact with metal, but not in a vapor phase. Fact: most applications require both direct contact and vapor phase. Fact: if you think you're saving 10% on a low-priced VCI product but have a rust issue, think again. But unfortunately, Rusty doesn't know this information. He walks into his boss's office to deliver the good news on all the money that'll save because of his cheap VCI solution. And they all live happily ever after. Right? Wrong. Now let's pause it, fast forward a few months into the future, and watch the true cost of cheap VCI add up. A few months later, an angry phone call comes into the customer service department complaining about rust on their parts. The customer service department calls the sales manager. Then the sales manager calls Rusty. The entire communication of the rust complaint costs around $48, assuming an hourly burden rate of $24 for 2 hours. Now, an 8D meeting needs to be arranged to discuss the complaints and figure out a solution. These meetings usually consist of the quality manager, engineering, production, packaging engineer, and customer service. Let's assume an average salary and burden rate of $45 per hour times 5 hours for a total of $450. Now the cost of Rust is up to $498. During this time, the Rusty parts are being shipped back to Rusty's company. That's another $818, which includes transportation and shipping/receiving personnel costs. Now our total cost of Rust is up to $1,316. Once the Rusty parts are returned, they have to be inspected. So let's assume 2 people will do this at a $22 hourly rate plus burden for 2 hours. This totals $88. Do you see a pattern here? The cost of Rust is now $1,404. And we're not done. Once the parts have been inspected, another 8D meeting is held. Yep, you guessed it, consisting of a quality manager, engineering, production, packaging engineer, and customer service. So now the total cost of Rust is $1,854. During the meeting, it was decided that it'd be better to rework the Rusty parts rather than scrapping them. Assuming a 75% rejection rate, to scrap the parts would be $24,000. To rework each part would cost $7,500, assuming it would take 1 minute per part for a total of 375 man hours. Our cost of Rust total now, $9,354. Now that the parts are cleaned, they have to be delivered back to the customer. Yep, another $818 for delivery, and again, including those transportation and shipping/receiving personnel costs, which brings the total cost of Rust up to $10,172. And of course, during this whole time, there's been constant communication with the customer. We can assume an average salary and burden rate of $50 per hour times 4 hours for $400. Keep in mind that the salary cost is not taking into account the loss of new business because of all the time and resources spent on this complaint. Rusty now has to go back to his boss to deliver the bad news. So what did Rusty learn? Armor products cost $81,120. Cheap VCI cost $73,008. Or did it? The perceived savings were $8,112, 7 to 10%. But we know now the actual cost of Rust was $10,572. And this is only for one incident. Maybe it's 1 out of 52 shipments for the year. What if this happens 2, 3, 4, or 5 times a year? It gets worse. That number doesn't include opportunity cost, scrap cost, or reputation cost, which in the end, cost the most. Don't take a risk on Rust. It's easier to explain price once than apologize for quality forever. Make the right decision and protect your parts and your reputation with Armor Protected Packaging. For more information about Armor Protected Packaging and how we can protect your parts from Rust, visit our website at www.armorvci.com.
All right, so now that you know what is Armor VCI and 10 reasons why you should buy your rust prevention from a known credible source and the real cost of cheap VCI, the last thing to talk about is how we've made purchasing Armor VCI easy for you. So I'm going to hop back here on the screen and I'm going to introduce you to our Armor Stock and Ready program if you're not familiar with it. For Armor, we have 3 times the inventory of products that are in stock and ready to ship out. Great during these crazy times of lead times and inventory shortages. So we have no order minimums and our products are in stock. And if you place that order by 1 p.m., they ship out the next business day. We've made pricing incredibly easy. So if this is something that you'd like sent to you, the stock and ready list, then feel free just to type that in the box to Chris and he will get it sent out to you. Again, just want to remind you about those Rustimonials. So if there is a specific application that you are looking for, feel free just to type that, type the name of the part, type the product you're looking at into that question box, and Chris will get it sent out to you. It was mentioned in the video, of course I'm biased because I work at Armor. I think if you enjoyed that video, we have one of the best corporate videos that are out there. So you don't have to write this website down. We send you an email in a couple days that gives you the link to this along with a recap of the webinar today. So what I want to do is just turn it over to Chris. I know we have about a minute or two left to see if there are any questions that came in on this webinar. So take it away, Chris.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much, Kristen, and thank you all for being here on this, what is this, Thursday? It's always strange when we start on a Tuesday, isn't it? So we saw a couple questions come in. I know a couple of you asked for the stock and ready list and for some of the documentation. We'll make sure to send that out right after this webinar. And then I just wanted to address a couple questions I saw too. Do we still have all of the products on our stock and ready list in stock? Yes, we do. We are doing a great job of keeping that up, even with the material shortages. So make sure, you know, if you're having a hard time finding VCI products elsewhere, please come to us. And then another question I saw was, do we have any testing that kind of shows our VCI versus the VCI that we're talking about here, this generic VCI or even a competitor VCI? And the answer is yes. We have something called our Chuck's Notes. It's a little play on Cliff's Notes. Our head lab geek is Charles, and we took a play on words there. So it shows how we stack up against our competition, and we would love to share that with you as well. So if you're interested in that, just let me know, and I'll send that along. But we want to respect your time, so I'm going to pass it back over to Kristen to wrap it up. Thanks again for being here with us.
Thank you, Chris. And a big thank you for myself for spending 30 minutes with us today. When we close out the webinar, a survey does come up. 1's the lowest, 5's the highest. We'd love if you rate the webinar. And then also, we'd love to hear from you any content. So anything that you want to learn about, just put it in that survey. So for myself, for my Chris, thank you and enjoy the rest of your day. Bye now.